we had at the time, the nation's third largest Walmart, so that's a pretty big deal. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, my guys. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. So we went to the mall part, connected, and my friends would always go. We would go hang out, right? And my friend's mom worked at Victoria's Secret. Okay, so I lived across the street from them. And their mom, when we did them all together, their mom was there. Okay, Victoria's Secret was on my no list. Okay, so I know the rules. Like in church, I was taught not to look at a woman the wrong way. So to me, like the Victoria's Secret posters on the wall, that's like softcore pornography. So I'm not gonna look at that. So I have my own set of rules. Like if I'm walking down the mall, there was across from Victoria's Secret, there was, those like old lady clothing stores that sell like teacher sweaters. You know what I'm talking about? Like with the big spider webs at Halloween time and things like that. Yeah. So if you're gonna be a grade school teacher, I don't know if you look forward to wearing those things, but whew. So I had that store like memorized, like the storefront and everything, because to me it's like I walk past Victoria's Secret, I'm gonna walk on the other side of the mall, and I'm gonna look this way for the duration. So I like had my own set of rules that I followed. My friends though, they were normal boys, normal junior high boys. So when their mom signed up to work at Victoria's Secret, it was like, yeah, like we have an excuse to go in there, and look at stuff. So they're always like looking for an excuse to bring something to mom at work. Like we'd be hanging out at the mall and they'd be like, hey, mom probably wants a pretzel. Let's get her one. That'll be nice, right? Let's get her a pretzel. We'll take it to her. I'm like, guys, I can't go in there. They're like, well, it'll be fine. So they would always go and I would always hang outside of the store because I was not, I had to follow the rules that I created for myself about following rules. So they would go and hang out. Well, this one particular time, this mobile, like, Christian bookstore cart, right, the cart in the middle, just happened to be right outside the Victoria's Secret. To me, it was like, thank you, God. You care about my righteousness, and here you sent me this Christian bookstore cart that I can hang out at. So I'm looking at all, like, the different kinds of Bibles, because I could look at those all day. Anybody have the metal Bible with a little popcorn symbol and a magnet? When that thing came out, man, that was all the rage to me. So I'm looking at these Bibles, right, and these guys who would later become my stepbrother, who I'd only met like once, came walking down. They said, Caleb. I said, oh, hey, stop, Jason. Yeah. I said, oh, that's cool. Hey, what are you guys doing? They're like, oh, we're just visiting some friends. They work down the mall. I was like, oh, that's cool. They're like, are you here alone? Like, is your mom here? And this is the line that will be repeating me for the rest of my life. Is, no, I'm here with my friends. They're in Victoria's Secret. I'm reading the Bible. So that's me. Okay, that's how I grew up. All right, so that's maybe a good picture. Now I tell you that story, one, again, so you know something about me, and two, because it's kind of relevant to what we're going to be speaking about. So that's the point of a good story, right? But something that's really cool about Jesus, who we're pretty crazy about around here, if you don't know, is he's like the best storyteller in the whole wide world. So when he told a story, I think the reason he was such a good storyteller is because his stories were so telling. So when he told a story, it wasn't just to make people get emotional, even though they usually did. Or it wasn't just to be funny, even though some of them were. But it was to connect to what was actually happening to the audience at the time. Like it was very relevant and impactful. It had a message for them that usually had a stew on it. Think about it. So what we've been talking about for the last few weeks, and what we're going to talk about tonight in the next couple of weeks, is this one particular story that Jesus told that people usually call the story of the prodigal son. So some of you might be familiar with that or know it really well, but that's what we've been talking about. I think it's kind of a misnomer, I guess, because it really is a story. When he starts, he says a man had two sons. Right? But I want to give a little touch of background, which Ed talked about this last week, but just in case, of what was kind of happening when he was telling the story. So Jesus is in this place with a group of people who are referred to as sinners and tax collectors and Pharisees. Right, so just to kind of give a recap, sinners is kind of like secular people, right, non-religious people, which in this day, time, and place, to be non-religious is like a huge deal, because in Jesus' day, in his country, this is a very, very, very culturally religious environment, separation from church and state, this was super religious. So to be irreligious was kind of like non-conforming, and then also there were tax collectors who Ed kind of described. Last year they're like traders, basically just like the lowest of the low at the time. And then there's Pharisees, who are these super, super religious people. Okay? I would probably relate more to them most of just off the bat. So what's happening is Jesus is hanging out with these sinners and tax collectors. There's probably like some prostitutes in there, all kinds of stuff like that. And the Pharisees say, kind of mutter to themselves, this man eats. He hangs out with these sinners, tax collectors. He even eats with them. So there's this kind of attitude like, what the heck is he doing? Because they're rule followers and these are rule breakers. You don't know if Jesus is such a good guy. Why is he hanging out with the wrong crowd? One bad apple spoils a bunch, and he's one good apple hanging out with a bunch of bad. Like that seems to be not okay. So what's he doing? And so Jesus goes through these three stories to kind of illustrate why he's hanging out. And the third one I think is probably the most poignant, the most powerful of the three, and that's the story of the prodigal son, which is where we're at right now. So everybody's up to speed with where we're at. Okay. So I'm not going to read the whole story from Scripture. I'll summarize the beginning, but we're going to specifically look at the last part. So in the story, he says that a man has two sons. There's an older and a younger. Okay? And he says that the younger son basically came to the dad and said, hey, give me my share of the inheritance. Okay? I want what's coming to me. And I know I'm supposed to wait till you die or whatever, but I want it right now. Kind of like J.P. Wentworth. Your money, get it when you need it. It's like, my money and I want it now. Okay, so he says that, he takes it, and he hits the road. Right? He goes to a distant land, he lives wildly, has a good old time, spends it all on lavish living, if you will. Then there's a famine, he gets super hungry, he's poor, he's broke, he's ashamed. He works for this pig farmer, which is really, really bad in that culture. So pigs are like the worst. I mean, some of you think that's bad already, but it's really, really bad. And he longs to just eat the same food that they're eating, but he can't get any food, right? So he comes up with a speech, he remembers this thing, and he thinks, you know what, the servants in my father's home, in my father's household, they're living better than me. So what I'll do is I'll just return home, I'm going to tell my dad that I've sinned against heaven, I've sinned against him, and if he'll just take me back as a servant, I'm not worthy to be his son, if he'll just take me back as a servant, then I'll live there, and maybe I can be taken care of, So he knows that he's really blown and he's not worthy to be his son. And the story goes, and some of you know this, that when he's walking back home, his dad sees him from a long way off, and his dad just starts running, which apparently Middle Eastern men at that time, maybe now, I don't know, don't do a lot of running. So there's no reason to think that's true now, but back then, men don't run. I guess that's kind of not okay. But he takes off running, right? And he goes and he embraces his son, and he kisses him. And the son starts in his speech, Father, I've sinned against heaven, and I've sinned against you. I'm not worthy to be, and the dad just kind of cuts him off. And he's like, someone get me the best robe we've got. Someone get the best rings we have. Somebody kill the fattened calf. Which, by the way, like a fattened calf is just kind of like a good cow that you just fatten up, so he saves it for a special occasion. Kind of like a nice aged bottle of wine, I think, might be the way to see it, So they kill the fattened calf, and he says, let's have a feast, for my son was dead, he's alive, he was lost and he's found. And that's the way it goes. So it's a really beautiful story that we talked about how really, even though this younger brother has really screwed up, there's grace for him in the father. And the father wants him to come back home. We talked about how God relates to us that way. And even though some of us, maybe off the bat, like who are good kids, don't feel like we can relate, something that Ed said last week was, have you ever made a bad decision for selfish reasons? And that's basically what's spinning this guy's, actions. And so in a way we can all relate to this guy, who is so desperate for grace. So it's a really, really cool story, right? And definitely these sinners and these tax collectors and prostitutes in the room are going to connect with this guy. But really, I think, considering that the story is an answer to the Pharisees saying, why does he eat these people? The second half of the story, which is what we're going to look at tonight, I think is more the main point of the story. I might be biased because that's what I'm talking about, but I do think it's the answer to these Pharisees' questions. Okay, so let's read it, and then we'll dive into it. Okay? All right. Now, so remember that there's a party going on. Younger son's home. That's where we're at. Everybody with me? Heading out, Jeff? Great. Okay. Now his older son is in the field. And coming in from the field, he approached the house and heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what's going on. And the servant replied, your brother has arrived, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf because he has received his son back safe and sound. Then the older son was furious and didn't want to enter in, but his father came out and begged him. And he answered his father, look, I've served you all these years. I never disobeyed your instruction, yet you've never given me as much as a young goat so that I could celebrate with my friends. But this son of yours returned, after gobbling up your estate on prostitutes, and you've slaughtered the fattened calf for him. And his father said, son, you're always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found. Okay, so this is the older brother. This is his part. So listen, it's easy to peg him as the bad guy, right? In the story, I mean, growing up, most of the time this story was told in church when I was there all the time. They usually didn't even tell this part. It's just like, what the heck does that have to do with us? So this is the cool part. That guy's, I don't know, it's probably just for the Pharisees. So, I mean, I didn't even know this. And if I ever talked on this, like in youth group, I would just skip this part, But I want to really look at this guy. So we're going to go through kind of three phases together. What I want us to do is first to understand him. So that's what we're going to do first. We're going to try to understand where he's coming from, empathize, if you will, with the older brother. Then we are going to analyze him. After we've done the hard work of putting ourselves in his shoes, we're going to try to understand what's going on in his heart. And then lastly, we're going to see if there's anything in here that applies to us. Okay? We're going to empathize, we're going to analyze, we're going to apply. It seems like a good plan. Whether it does to you or not, that's what I'm going to do. So I hope that's okay. All right. So, empathizing, understanding. Number one, he's the older brother. Any oldest kids here? Oh, a lot of you. Okay. All right. I've heard, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard that there's a significant amount of pressure that comes along with being the oldest child in the family. I'm seeing laughter. Do you older people agree with that statement? Okay. Generally, the answer seems to be yes. All right. So let's not forget that. In this time and place and culture, that's even more so true. That if you're the oldest, the family name, the family job, the family state is in your hands, right? So there's a lot of pressure on this guy. Let's not forget that first. Second, he said his own admission, he's been obedient his whole life. He's never disobeyed his dad. He's always followed the rules, always played by the rules, right? So that seems to be pretty admirable, I think. Let's not forget that. But he's worked very hard this whole time. He's not like his younger brother who just kind of said, heck with the family, I'm out of here. He's stuck around. He's done what he's supposed to do. He's never disobeyed his father once. I couldn't say that to my mom. I know that. I couldn't say, I've never disobeyed you. Maybe he's lying, but I don't think so. The dad didn't say, you're lying. It seems like he's been a pretty obedient son. Lastly, he is the heir, right, to what's left. So in the culture at that time, there's a commandment in the book of Deuteronomy about this, which is the law that this supposed family would be following. Your oldest son gets twice the share of an inheritance as everyone else. Okay, so if you had 5 sons, and you died, then your stuff would be divided into 6 parts, right? The oldest son getting 2/6, or aka a third, and everyone else getting 1/6. All right. So when the younger son said, "Give me, it's my money, I want it now, give it to me," that's a third. Okay, so 1/3. 2 sons, 1/3. So everything that's left is 2/3 of what was there originally. There's little math, little word problem, ACT right there, it's ACT material, and then that's all his. So let's not forget that either. Everything the father's got at this point is just a matter of time till the old man croaks, and it's his. Okay, so this is his stuff. So those are some things to remember about him. He's the oldest. There's a lot of pressure. He's been a good son his whole life, and he's the heir to the throne. So it doesn't seem unreasonable to me that he would get a little angry, right? And it's his stuff. Let's not forget that. He's been obedient his entire life, and he's never gotten a single thing from his dad. Maybe a good job. I don't know. Not a paycheck, that's for sure. His dad's never celebrated his obedience, right? But this brother of yours, the one, by the way, that disgraced the family name, that took a third of the stuff, that left your father in financial disarray to some extent, has come back home because he has no place to go besides from home. and your dad throws him a big party. Slaughters the fattened calf, the nice, circa 1912 bottle of wine, pops it open for this son, and your dad's never even given you a Diet Coke. This is absurd to some extent. And I think it seems reasonable that he would be upset about this. And again, it's his stuff. So the best robe, that's really kind of his robe. The rings, those are going to be his rings. The cow, his cow. You got what I'm saying? So imagine, let's try to do it in modern day. You guys most of you got accepted into Ohio State University. Congratulations, by the way. Well done. I want you to picture this person in your high school graduating class, the slacker. Okay? Me, guy named Mike Sharp. He's one of my best friends. He would say that about himself too. Alright? Anyways. So picture your person. Alright? The one who talked back to the teacher sometime, made jokes, whatever was funny, didn't turn in homework, always making up excuses, had these elaborate plans to get on the intercom system and say dirty things. Whoever it was, picture that kid, okay? And you're in the time of the year right before, you're waiting to hear back about scholarships, and what's his or her face? Comes into the classroom and says, hey, look at this letter. It turns out that Ohio State is going to give me a full ride scholarship to come here. I don't have to pay a single dollar, and I can major in whatever I want. They said they'd let me in any program, What the heck? I would not be, if Mike Sharp comes in with that letter, well, first of all, I know he made it up, okay? But if we get to the day where I realize he didn't, I would not have gone here. I would have been like, I don't believe in this institution any longer. That's absurd. That's ridiculous. That's because I worked hard. Sure, maybe I would deserve that. I graduated in the top of my class. This guy, heck no. He's getting what I deserve. So I think in a sense, that's how this brother feels. I worked hard. I'm the one who's obeyed my whole life. If anybody deserves this party, this welcoming, this affirmation, it's me, not him. He deserves to get his butt out of here. He ruined things for us. Don't you remember that? So I just don't want us to just make him the bad guy out of that, okay? Because it seems reasonable to me. This is what I deserve, and this kid's getting it. I think most of us can probably feel that way. Okay, empathize. All right. So next, let's analyze. All right. Oh, this to say as well. I think the Pharisees at the time, the religious people in the room that Jesus was telling the story to, they probably understand this feeling too. After all, they're waiting on this guy to come, right? This Messiah, the Savior. That's what their whole belief system is kind of built around this moment of coming, right? And Jesus is kind of saying things that make him out to be this guy that they're waiting for. Now, they're the ones who have spent their whole life studying the law, trying to figure out how to keep it, making laws about how to follow the law. And you're telling me that you might be the Messiah and you're hanging out with hookers, We're the ones who spent our whole lives being obedient to. So if you were really God's Messiah, come on, you would be having dinner alive. So I think that this probably feeling is existing right then too, this idea that this is what we deserve, and they're getting it, so you can't really get it. Okay, so now let's analyze what's happening, because the point, Jesus is not telling a story with the point of empathizing with the Pharisees. Okay, that's a piece I'm adding in there, but he didn't end the story and say, so don't be so hard on them for wondering why I'm eating with you, okay? You would feel the same. That's not the point. He's telling the story in direct kind of opposition to the attitude of the Pharisees. So the way that they feel is not good. There's something not okay with it. We might understand what it feels like to feel it. We might even be able to say, I might feel that myself. But it's not what we should feel. Okay, so there's something behind it. So something about this son, let's go back into the story now, has kind of changed the status quo for this older brother. And here's what I mean. He's lived his whole life in obedience to the Father, never disobeyed once, right? Never has lived his entire life saying, yes, Dad, yes, Dad, yes, sir, yes, Father, until this moment was it. When his dad brings the younger son, he says, come inside. No, won't do it, can't make me, won't do it. Disobedience, disconnect from between the father and son, probably first time ever. That he's putting his foot down and saying, I know you're going this way, but I am not going to go that way, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to leave the house, and I'm not going to come inside. So something has changed with the older brother. Something has tipped the scale, right? So really the question isn't so much of a what thing, as in like, what has he done? Or what has he done his whole life? Obedience. Really the question is to be asking to discern his brother's why. Why has he been obedient? Okay? Because if whatever has caused him to be obedient his whole life is causing him to be disobedient in this moment. So let's think of what his possible motivation could be. A good one would be the love of his father. Because he loves his father, he's been obedient his whole life. Okay? Now, if that were his motivation, his life might look similar up to this point. If everything he did were out of a motivation for love for the father, he probably would have obeyed his father his whole life. But at this moment, his life would look very different. If everything he did were because he loved his father, he would recognize that his father is taking great love and joy in his son coming home, and that he's embracing him, he's throwing a party, so I think the older brother would join. But whatever is his motivation in life is not leading him to accept his younger brother. It's leading him to reject the acceptance of his younger brother. So you probably ascertained this already, but I would say that his motivation is selfishness. Okay, so at the core of this older brother, we have someone who is self-seeking, self-interested. Everything about him says, I earned that. I earned. And earning is something I think is really popular, and seen as probably a good thing in our culture. And I don't know that it's always like this, but in this circumstance, earning is definitely self-centered. So what he's saying is, I did good so I could receive good, right? So his obedience, he's saying, I was obedient, I deserved this, I earned this. But in effect, it's really all about him. He doesn't really give much of a rip about his father. He's still kind of alienated from his father and probably always has been. To him, his life is obedience to receive, obedience to get. At the heart of this man, he's selfish. And this is religion. Now, that may be a shocker for some of you when we say that, because here we are in the church, as a church. But I guess let me define religion this way, as this kind of idea that you are in this works-based relationship with God, right? And you're going to do good in order to to make God happy with you, to earn a place in heaven, to be enlightened, whatever you want to call it, to get to the next stage. You're gonna do enough good things so that the balance weighs out and God has favor on you, right? But what is at the center of that mindset is you and your position. Okay, so when I say religion, that's what I mean. At the heart of religion is selfishness. Okay, we could even say this for legalism or morality, even for people who aren't religious in a sense. In fact, it's going to be in a little bit of all of us, because a lot of us worked really hard in high school, right? Or maybe worked really hard here, served on the right committees, was the president of the right club, so we could get something out of it. So anytime you really have this kind of sense of earning, you're going to be at the middle of it. Selfishness is what's driving you, right? So there's this story that a guy named C.H. Spurgeon tells about a carrot and a horse. And I'll paraphrase. It goes like this. There's a farmer. He grew a carrot once. Biggest carrot you've ever seen. Biggest carrot he'd ever seen. Real good carrot. And he had a king, and he loved his king. He loved the king of the land, and he was a good king. So he takes the carrot, and he takes it to the king. He says, King, look at this carrot. It's the best carrot I've ever grown, biggest carrot I've ever seen, and I want you to have it, because you're a great king, and I want you to have my back. And so the king says, thank you. And as the servant walks away, the king stops and he says, wait a second. You're so faithful with what you have, and I've discerned your heart. I've got this plot of land that's like 7 times bigger than that farm you're working with right now. I want you to have it. I want you to take it. Give me some of the produce from it, but consider it yours. And the servant goes away thrilled. I didn't expect that. I just wanted to give you it. It's good. Thank you. So, in the meantime, there's this nobleman kind of off in the corner, observing all this go down. And he thinks to himself, that's what you get for a carrot. I mean, this guy's working with produce. I've got some good stuff, So he goes home. He goes into his barn, let's say. Let's say he's a horse breeder, right? And he gets this black stallion. And he rides it into the court the next day. And he hops off and says, King, I'm a horse breeder. This is the best horse I've ever bred, the best horse I've ever seen. The king says, discerns his heart a little bit, and he says, thanks. King says, welcome. Anything else you wanted to say? You know? The king says, let me explain. You're not getting anything. You know? This is why. Yesterday, I know you were here. The servant, you see, he gave me the carrot, but you gave yourself to him. The idea that he's given things, he's done the right thing, but it's been really just to receive. Okay, and this is the attitude that's happening in the older brother. This is the attitude of the Pharisees. They have followed their whole life with the understanding that they're going to please God or do the right thing enough that they deserve stuff from Him. You know, they deserve to be eaten with, but not these people. That's the attitude. And this really, I mean, it transcends religion. Whatever your scale or system is, you know, you think that as humans, we can often think that we deserve what we have because we've been good enough, tolerant enough, smart enough, educated enough, open-minded enough, whatever you want to say. And so then we take from it. We want to take. And I think what's really happening here is that what's interesting is the younger brother and the older brother are really suffering from the same problem. Right? So one thing that Ed said last week was, have you ever done anything? Have you ever made a bad decision for selfish reasons? If so, you can probably relate to the younger brother. And I would ask you, have you ever made a good decision for selfish reasons? And if so, you can probably relate to the older brother. And something that we see in the story is that really, they're honestly the same. You know, at their heart, they are the same. They are selfish. They are interested in doing whatever it takes to get what they want. And it might be through rebellion, right, and relativism and irreligion, and they just do whatever they want to get what they want. Or it might be through moral conformity and religion and being goody two-shoes, because that's really the most efficient way to get what you want. You know, my brother and I are very different people. Growing up, my brother made most of the same normal mistakes that high school boys made. You know, I'll let you fill in the blank. I did not. Okay, I followed the law tooth and nail. I was a poster child at my church. You know, I was a poster child for like the state of Ohio. I wish that were an exaggeration. You know, but honestly, like when my brother, you know, if he looked at stuff he shouldn't have looked at, or you know, dated girls in a manner that he shouldn't have dated, he did it for selfish reasons. You know, but in my abstinence from those things, my reasons were selfish too. You know, at the end of the day, I knew I'll get caught in what's going to happen to my reputation. I really like this thing I've got going for me right now, where everybody lights up when I walk into a church. You know, like I enjoy that. So I can't ruin that. You know, I've got my identity built on the fact that I have an acceptance that I'm looked up to. You know, people ask me to pray at events in my high school. You know, kids that I went to school with called me Moses. You know, and to me, I loved that. You know, like I thrived on that. I wouldn't do anything to compromise that. So my obedience wasn't this, oh God, or oh you people around me, I'm going to serve you. It was I would do a cost-benefit analysis and think, no, that'll ruin what I've got going for me, so I'm not going to do that. You know, and I am not exaggerating. Some of you can relate with that, but I mean, these are the facts that are going through my head when I make a decision whether to be disobedient or not. My obedience is driven by selfish desire. Okay? So, that's one. Alright, so last small chunk of time, I want to see how this applies. Okay? What can we take from this, right? So first, I'm going to make a claim that as humanity, we're all selfish. Okay? I think generally, people don't disagree with that, right? I feel that way. In this teaching that we got from Jesus, he's kind of pointing that out, that both sets of these people in this room, the religious and the sinners, are really driven by self-interest, okay? And I think whether you're a Christian or not, you could probably agree with that. Richard Dawkins, even, okay? So that's like the most opposed to religion guy I can think of. I personally find him charming. I know like most of you won't agree with me in the room. I'm like, I want to step back when I say that because I know he says terrible, terrible things sometimes. It's a hurtful thing. But I just think, I'd like to get him a cup of coffee. I think we could be friends. My atheist roommate, Andrew, assures me that's not true. He's like, and you only think he's charming because of British accent. I think, well, maybe, but I still think we could be friends. We just have to talk about something we agree on, like, I don't know, PBS or something. So anyways, he says this. He says, we should try to teach altruism and charity because we are all born selfish. So it's our Darwinian naturalistic worldview is the thing that's driving him to say that, but he's also looking at evidence around him and knowing, yeah, people are selfish. That's for sure. I agree with him that we're all selfish. I disagree a little bit that we can just fix things by teaching charity and altruism, because I think we can see that we can do really good things for pretty selfish reasons. So here's another one for you, another quote. Jane Austen. There. A lot of fans in the room. Not all female fans, I know, but I hear a lot of high-pitched voices. So that could just be me talking, though. Who knows? So, anyways, she says this: selfishness must always be forgiven, because there's no hope for a cure. Selfishness must always be forgiven, because there's no hope for a cure. So she's looking at the same issue of everyone being selfish, and she's saying, no, I don't think you can just teach people out every day. It seems that there's no hope for it. So I a little bit more agree with Jane Austen, but I still disagree with the text. Because I'd like to say that I think there is a hope for it, for selfishness. And I'm not going to tell you that I think that every Christian is cured of selfishness, because the Christians in the room know that that's not true. And if you're not a Christian in the room, you probably know that's actually true. But I would like to make a claim that in this in this person that you're looking at, and what he brings, I think you can find a way to move out of selfishness and into a place where it's free to be selfish, set free to be. So I think that the solution offered to humanity is the same one that's offered in this short story that Jesus tells. Same one he's offering to this room, same one offered to humanity. And I think it goes a little something like this, that we have the freedom to be selfish, we can be set free from this cycle when we leave our life of religion, rebellion behind, right? We turn away from that life of religion, rebellion, whatever, selfishness, right? And embrace and be changed by the Father's grace. So that's the option we see presented to both sons. We might call this in repentance, is the word. Okay? We see that presented to both sons. Son one, it's a little easier for him because he knows that he needs grace. Younger son, right? He comes home, leaves the life behind him, chooses to be embraced by his father, and receive it. It's got to be humbling. He came in just to say, I'll be your servant, and his dad gave him everything. So it's not easy to receive, even for him, I think. But if he receives it, it's a new life. The older son, same thing. He has to turn away from his life of self-focused obedience. Accept this Father's grace and be changed by it. Be changed, or you cannot have that relationship anymore. You will be alienated. I'm not going to go into a whole Les Mis thing because I know time's ticking, but seriously, that's Javert. Okay, if you know the movie, that's just him, right? He refuses to be changed by grace. Okay, I'm sorry, I know I'm alienating everyone who hasn't seen it, but so good. Okay, so what that looks like, what this grace of God looks like is this, right? That in the biblical narrative, in the gospel-centered worldview, right, we're created as a human race to be self-giving, to be reflections of God, to be in communities where we love one another, we love the people around us, and we love God. But there's this thing called the fall happens, basically when humanity starts to unravel, and we have decided instead of living out lives of love, we decide to love ourselves first as humanity, aka everyone is selfish. Right? And because of that, the world around us is unraveling. That's why we see so much brokenness. Like we see good things, we see genuine altruism because we're still creative, right? We still bear this image of God thing. But by and large, humanity is out for itself. We are out for ourselves. And you can't stop thinking that way. It's just ingrained in us. And this alienates us from our Father. It puts us out of the house. Because this isn't where his heart's going, but this is where our heart's going. But he loves us so much, right? That he finds a way to get to us. And so that's why we see this person, Jesus. Okay, we're crazy about him, not just because he's a good storyteller, right? We are crazy about him because of what he's done. Who he is and what he's done, right? He's referred to as the firstborn of all creation. Not meaning that he was created necessarily, but that he holds the elder brother status. Some people refer to him as the truest elder brother, the one who should have been, who should have been in that story. He came, and you see the thing about him is he did live a perfect life of obedience, like the older brother claimed, and he actually lived it not self-focused, not for selfish reasons, but he lived a life pouring out, giving. You'll never find a spot against him. Just try. There's no character in any story you'll ever find that is as drawing, as noble, as righteous, yet as loving and accepting as this one right here. Try. Let me know. And he has the right to call his inheritance his own. But he gives. So the kind of the climax of this story is what we call, the cross, right? And you guys, a lot of you know it, but if you know it, if you really know it, you love to hear it again. That in that moment, what he does is this kind of substitution where we have this alienation from God because of our own selfishness, right? And he takes that on himself. Sacrifice is the word. But there's a verse in the New Testament, a letter, that says that he who knew no sin, and it's a sin being any of this thing that results from his selfishness. He who knew none of that garbage, he made no mistake. He who was always giving in his actions and never taking. He who knew no sin, he became sin. And he took what we deserve, so that we might become the righteousness of God, aka so that we might have good standing, we might be able to be received, welcomed, embraced, kissed, have a party over. We might be able to have that righteousness of God to come back to him. So this is what, as a Christian, this is how we see Jesus. He says this, he says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. So that's kind of the idea that because he's laid down his life, and he is the elder brother, so he opens up that inheritance for us. He takes what we deserve, and he gives us what he deserves. And why I think that frees us to be selfless is because only in this kind of life of grace, where you're defined by the fact that you were given everything in the world and you deserve nothing, are we really free to stop trying to look out for ourselves? Because there's someone who has already looked out for us. So in the gospel, in this life of grace that we live, we realize that we don't have to try to earn anymore, to get things for us, because he's given it all, when we earn nothing. And so in that, we find freedom to be able to give. It's easy to forget that. I'm not claiming that a person who's a Christian is got it all together and they're always making decisions that are selfless and they're not selfish anymore. But I do claim that this reality, this worldview, this story is the thing that can set you free to live a selfless life. And this is where we find actual, true, beautiful motivation to be generous and to be selfless. So I'd look at Jane Austen and I'd say, yeah, you're right. We should forgive it. We definitely should forgive selfishness in people, because we have to realize that we're all the same. Whether it plays out as religion or rebellion or something in the middle, like the rest of us probably are in the middle. We have to realize that people who aren't like us, they're the same. They really are the same. We're all selfish. But I disagree, and I would say, there's a hope for us too. And there's definitely hope for us too. So that's what I want to share with you guys, and I appreciate your time and listening. I'm going to pray and say something and bring it together. Why don't you pray with me? Father, thank you so much for time to be together as a family. But most importantly, God, just thank you for this beautiful story that you told that just speaks to the heart. It's so timeless, God. You know, it spoke then and it speaks now. How you do that, I just don't know. But I think it's a Jesus. I think he cares. He loves us and speaks forgiveness and grace to us on our side of the hands to lay on that. I thank you for freeing us from earning, freeing us from selfishness, and thank you for embracing us in the home. And God, I just ask that we will continue to see that here, and we love you. In Jesus' name,